Once again, I got snubbed. I'm not on the All-Star team. I'm not happy about it. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all the Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Look at my lower third. You can call me Sully. I'm an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcaster for well over a decade, and this is now my fifth full season with the Locked On Podcast Network. But once a week, I do a crossover with Locked On Diamondbacks, which means I have a co-host. He's right over there. Sign in, please.
Yes, Miller Thomas, host of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. You can catch me on Twitter, my personal account at CreatorThomas24. Follow the show account, Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram. Hopefully, Twitter is going to be back and working. I had a little bit of a fiasco this past week. And of course, we're on all your streaming platforms. And don't forget to hit subscribe, Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube as well.
Yeah, look out. Hopefully we'll still be on Twitter. Don't tweet too much, I guess, or don't read too much. I don't know what's happening there. We'll be on Mastodon, or heck, you know what? We may have to go back to sending you postcards, because how can that?
Ooh.
And, Locked On MLB, Pods, Twitter, Instagram, Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. And hey, this episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Ibotta can give you cash back on grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods to toothpaste, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by downloading the free Ibotta app and using code MLB. So, I am still up north. I'm still in the San Francisco Bay Area, and as you can tell, I'm still in my mother's house right now for the next week or so. But I did a show. The last show I did was I did my picks for the All-Star roster. And today, we're recording this on Sunday, they announced the official All-Star rosters. And I have to say, they're eerily similar to my picks. The starters are almost identical with a couple of changes here or there. Most of the pitchers, including I'm glad to see Justin Steele got on. I'm glad to see Devin Williams got on. These were some of the ones that I had on my list. And there's a couple that made me have a little bit of pause. There's a couple of names I was surprised did not make it on the list. And a couple of teams lone representative made me scratch my head a little bit. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I'm fine with who they have. And also remember, folks, there's always going to be a player who has to drop out for an injury, or a player has to be removed from the roster for this reason or another. So I can't scream too much about snubs now, because by the time the All-Star game comes around, everyone screams about being a snub usually ends up on the team. And when you go to baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth, and you are on the All-Star team as a reserve replacement, do you know what it says? It just says All-Star. It doesn't say reserve replacement or anything like that. So it's tough for me to get too worked up about some of the names that are not on here. But I will admit there are a few that surprised me, and there's two specific that surprised me that were not on there. But tell me your initial thoughts.
Yeah, because for me, there were some teams where I'm like, whoa, they might have got one too many All-Stars. And then there were some teams where I'm like, that was the All-Star representative that they chose from that squad. So I think it would be kind of fun just to go by, break it down by league, start with the American League or the National League first, and go through our surprises and snubs, because I definitely have a few surprises and snubs for each of the leagues. So which would you like to start with?
Well, let's start with the National League, because I think that, to me, save for one, there's only one that surprised me, was a team representative and not another. But I think for me, looking at the National League starters and reserves, I think for the most part, I'm pretty solid with them.
Yeah, I think with the starters, I'm okay with everything from both teams. When I'm looking at the National League roster right now, The Braves, they're sending like 8 people to the All-Star game. I know they're having a fantastic season. Statistically, they're arguably the best team in Major League Baseball. But did they have an All-Star? Maybe one too many. A guy like Austin Riley in the past couple of years, I would have told you he's the best power sluggers in baseball, deserving of an MVP, conversation. But this past season, I just don't think Austin Riley is having that Austin Riley type season. And when you're sending 6 to 7 other guys, I'm okay fitting in another NL All-Star snub that didn't make it to this year's team.
By the way, that is exactly when, those of you who listen to the show on that I posted on this last Friday when I did my version of it, I left out Riley for that same reason. I had Heimer Candelario from Washington, who's a fine third baseman, very good defensive third baseman, and also he was my Washington representative on the team. And yeah, I thought, and I was going through and I said, and I remember thinking, all right, Braves fans, you can't yell at me. This is practically the Braves starting lineup in the freaking,
so half their roster in there.
Yeah. And so again, I mean, it's not egregious, and they wound up bringing the pitcher Gray, who's having a fine season. And so definitely they bring in a fine, but like they have Matt Olson. I have no problem with Matt Olson. Mm-hmm. I have no problem with Ozzie Albies. And in the starting lineup, Sean Murphy. Did I have him as my? I think I had him as my starting catcher. Yeah, I think I did too. Yeah, I did. And I had Arcia as my starting shortstop. Obviously, Acuna is an excellent outfielder, and oddly, I had Michael Harris II, so I actually had another Brave on my starting lineup. I did have Corbin Carroll on my All-Star team, and I did have Mookie Betts on my All-Star team. But like, and for good measure, Freddie Freeman's thrown in there too, and I still think of him as a Brave, even though he hasn't been a Brave for a couple of seasons now. Riley is the one who I would have switched out. Again, it's not a horrific pick, obviously, but if you had to drop one Brave from there, that would have been the one I would have picked. By the way, someone made a great point about this Braves team, because they've, they have right now the best record in baseball, and they have done that without Max Fried.
Yeah,
who was
Kyle Wright.
You're right, Kyle Wright, Max Fried. There's another. Who's the other one? Big. I mean, there's a couple of really. Who else? There's one other big one that's on there.
Morning.
Yeah, but I mean, but either just right there, 2 all-star pitchers have contributed almost nothing this year, and here they are. They just surpassed Tampa Bay for the best record in baseball this year. And it's something I like to bring up when people talk about, well, this team's got a lot of injuries. This team's got a lot of injuries. If the Braves win the pennant this year, then you'll have 2 out of 3 years where they were decimated with injuries and would go to the World Series. They had to get a whole new outfield a couple of years ago. So when the Braves are a walking example of, hey, you've lost all-star pitchers to injury, you've had an all-star shortstop and an all-star first baseman walk.
Yeah.
And yet here they are. They're probably going to win 100 games again. And right now look like the best team in the National League. Sorry, we'll get to the D-backs a little bit later.
Whoa.
No. But
no, you're right.
But the Braves are
the best.
And so, but again, we're talking a little bit like, one of the names not on the, I have no problem if a team's the best team in baseball has a lot of representatives on there, because they're good.
Yeah,
there's a reason.
And one guy we didn't even talk about, also from that Braves team, who made it to the All-Star game, who is carrying the load with the Frieds and the Wrights out, is Bryce Elder, who is kind of a surprise, not because of what he's done statistically, but we talk so much about this Braves young core and all the up-and-coming players they've had with the Michael Harrises and the Spencer Striders, but like coming into the year, I feel like no one really had a Bryce Elder conversation. He wasn't really on my radar. Now he's turned into one of the best young pitchers in baseball. He's like top 3 in the National League in terms of ERA, another All-Star. He's probably going to get bagged by the Braves at the end of this season as well.
Yeah, and if I don't know what Fried's situation, I don't know if he's out for the rest of the year, but if he comes back, I mean, sometimes it's like, do they need to make a big deal, or do they just have to wait for some of these people to come off the disabled list? I mean, we're going to find out soon enough. But yeah, Elder and Strider have become the most entertaining 1-2 punch, and they're both under 25 years old.
Yeah.
So good on them. And
Speaking of your former Brave, Dansby Swanson, does he feel a little bit like a reach for this All-Star game? Not exactly having a great season.
But there's the nationally shortstop situation is not that great right now.
But do I need another backup shortstop, or could I put a different infielder into that spot? Maybe someone that's having a really fantastic season off the second best team in the National League, Ketel Marte, who was a snub for the National.
But he was a snub, and it's funny. I had him on my All-Star team, and I did not have Lourdes Gurriel Jr. But I had Marte, I had Corbin Carroll, I had Gallen. I represented the Diamondbacks quite well. Thank you very much. I was surprised that Gurriel got the call.
I think at the time when the voting first started, Gurriel was probably rightfully in that fourth outfielder spot. But then since then, his numbers have just kind of tailed off just a bit. And then there's some just other guys in the National League that's pretty deserving. Like when I think about the D-backs team, I'm surprised a guy like Gurriel's making it. But Ketel Marte, Christian Walkers, and the Merrill Kellys, they're going to be missing it from this D-backs roster. Just kind of interesting as an all-star representative narrative.
I also was surprised that Brandon Nimmo of the Mets wasn't on there. Brandon Nimmo is having a wonderful season. Pete Alonso was the Mets representative, and I had Nimmo as mine. I think Nimmo's having a better all-around year. And he has been, and in the few Mets highlights we've had this year, Nimmo has been right there in the middle of it. I don't think any of these exclusions have been, are breathtaking. And I do think, as I said, by the time we get to the game itself, we'll see some of those holes being filled in. I think Juan Soto had a really good last month going into the All-Star break. I think that boosted his case. Diaz being the lone Colorado Rocky in there. But again, like Ellie De La Cruz is not on there because he's only played for a couple of weeks. But this is why I want to start the season with the All-Star game, because when we look at the end of the year, De La Cruz may have an all-star caliber season, or he may be a flash in the pan for a couple of weeks. And you don't have this controversy if you're building on someone's entire year from the previous year. So I'm a broken record on that. But
I'm still on if you're going to change the All-Star game of when it should be, I'm going with the end of the season as opposed to the beginning of the season. But for guys, if you're just talking about biggest snubs from the NL roster, I just mentioned Ketel Marte. Also, how about a little Paul Goldschmidt? No, his team is garbage, but he is the reigning MVP, who is once again putting up another statistically pretty good season. And then also, arguably, the best player in the National League when healthy. He just missed the last season and a half due to PED use. But Fernando Tatis.
Tatis should have been on there. That was a surprising one.
If you're talking about a guy that's going to be an injury replacement, he seems like he's number one in that power ranking, because who doesn't want to see Fernando Tatis in an All-Star game?
And also, I do think you have to have at least one backup for each position, because you just – you're not going to, especially if something happens to Arcia during the game, you don't want to have someone playing out of position in the All-Star game. So, and maybe Mookie Betts could play shortstop like he did for a couple of games with LA. But all right, we'll tell you what, when we get back, we're going to talk about the American League, because there's a couple of ones in the American League that really caught my eye, including a player on one of the worst teams in baseball, but who I really wanted to see in this All-Star game. Hey, are you picking up burgers and hot dogs for the 4th of July? Tomorrow's the 4th of July. I sound like the mayor in Jaws. Tomorrow's the 4th of July, and we're going to have one of the best summers we've ever had. And if you're going to go there, we're going to pick up your burgers, your dogs. You got your coleslaw. I love my pickles. Got to get my pickles. Got to get my peppers, all the stuff out there. And you know what? You know you're going to do it, but why not get some cash back for it? You could do that with Ibotta. Now, Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items, from produce to personal care to pantry goods. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop, and you get cash back. It's really that easy. The average Ibotta user earns about $120 a year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. Or you can use your cash back to buy that flight you've been eyeing. If If you want, I'm going to be flying up to Oakland pretty soon to catch one of the last days games of this year. Maybe I can sort of cover the cost of the bottom. And guess what? You can do what you want with the money back. Other apps give you points, but that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cold, hard cash back, and you can cash out your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers, too, when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code MLB when you register. Go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app and use code MLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use the code MLB. Ibotta, put that cash in your pocket. All right.
All right.
By the way, we were having a great 4th of July cookout tomorrow, and we're going to do what we do every year. We cook out. We have a ball game on.
Ooh.
And then later we watch the greatest 4th of July movie ever made, Jaws. Got to do it. Jaws. That's the big attack is on the 4th.
Independence Day?
No, please, Independent. Jaws.
Okay.
Jaws.
I would have to think of other movies that fall on the 4th of
August.
July. I
For
don't know.
sakes, tomorrow's the 4th of July. We're going to have one of the best summers we've ever had. If you fellas want to worry about the safety, you do whatever you have to make the beaches safe. But those beaches will be open this weekend. That's right. That's the mayor in Jaws. By the way, it just shows my favorite detail about Jaws and Jaws 2. The mayor covers up the first death, keeps the beaches open, and more people die. Okay? And to the point where everyone sees that's what he did. In Jaws 2, he's still the mayor. You would think it would be easy to run against a guy who kept the beaches open. Vote for me and you will not be eaten. But no, he got reelected. Got to vote, people. You got to vote.
I just looked up some other movies that take place around the 4th of July. How about a little Hamilton? Mm-hmm. Magic Mike XXL.
Those are two very different. Those are two very different films. All right, well, we're going to go off on a wild tangent here. But yeah, go watch some baseball. Watch a great movie with Hamilton. You're going to watch 1776, Independence Day. I'm going to watch Jaws, and let's check out the American League All-Stars. Pretty close to what I had. Jonah Heim, Yandy Diaz. The up the middle infield of Semien and Seager. I had Bichette over Seager, but I had Seager on my roster. At that point, we're kind of nitpicking there.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, there's a lot of Rangers and Rays on this team. Now Judge is one of the starting outfielders. Of course, he's not going to be on the active roster.
Yeah.
Trout and Rosarena. Shohei Ohtani, of course, is going to be the DH and the starting pitcher. I'm glad to see Bichette and Whit Merrifield get on there. I'm Salvador Perez. The Royals don't have a legit all-star this year. So, Perez is like, they need another outfield. They need another catcher. Austin Hayes, Luis Robert Jr., Jordan Alvarez, Odelis Garcia, Jose Ramirez, Vlad Guerrero Jr. I have no issues with any of them. They're all solid players having solid years. I'll tell you the one that caught me by surprise. And we're nitpicking here a little bit when you're talking about getting the lone representative from a lousy team. Brent Rooker is the A's representative.
Okay.
Brent is, nobody on the A's is having a great year. But he is... I wanted Ruiz, Stuart Ruiz. The guy has 42 stolen bases already, and he has his batting stats are his OPS isn't higher, but he's batting higher than Rooker, and he is the type of player that when as we're emphasizing speed in the game right now, you're going to put him on as a pinch runner. Everyone's like, "Oh, this guy's got 42 stolen bases already." He's got a player from the A's being that secret weapon of your pinch runner, the speed. I think he would add an element of excitement that, no offense to Brent Rooker, congratulations for making the All-Star team, but Ruiz would add that level of excitement. And I was really disappointed when I saw he wasn't on the team. That's actually one of the biggest disappointments I had looking at the roster is the A's token rep was not the token rep I wanted.
I mean, I agree. Having that skill set would have been more interesting for the All-Star game. I do think Brent Rooker is probably more a deserving candidate, but in terms of like All-Star game excitement, no one's going there to watch Brent Rooker. But at least if you have Ruiz on first base in a big situation, anything is possible with him. I did have like 4 kind of surprises, I guess, from the American League. I'll just throw them all out at you. Michael Lorenzen making it for the Detroit Tigers as their All-Star representative with an ERA north of 4. I mean, I know this Tigers team doesn't have a lot of people, but maybe go into Alex Lang. Just
or,
put me. I don't
Eduardo
know.
Rodriguez. What's wrong with Eduardo Rodriguez?
Or Erod, yeah.
Why did they go with Lorenzen over? Yeah, that makes no sense to me.
I don't know. Okay. And then another one. I mean, this team somehow sent like multiple people despite being just kind of like middle of the pack in the American League. But Whit Merrifield, I mean, if you're talking about speed, sure, a guy that could bat a little bit, but he's typically like a 690 OPS guy. And I don't think he's really changing life for any ball club. I just find he's usually underwhelming and overrated.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't mind it as much as a couple of the other ones. But yeah, I definitely could see how he would be one. I was surprised that Kenley Jansen was the Red Sox rep and not Alex Verdugo.
Yeah, you could have gotten a bunch of different. Verdugo, Devers got 800 OPS, 25 bombs, or Yoshida, who's having like a fantastic season too.
Yoshida, yeah. I really thought it was going to be Verdugo, who has shown, even this last week, has put on a showcase of power and defense. And I've been underwhelmed by Kenley Jansen, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think Doogie leads the American League in doubles too, so he's having a great season for the Red Sox.
I think when people look at this Red Sox team, they don't think, oh man, Kenley Jansen, man. Kenley Jansen. It's like, I mean, again, I don't think Verdugo is going to be in the MVP conversation, but I think he's having an all-star caliber season. And I think that I don't get it. I really don't.
No, that one surprised me. I had that one written down. Do you think the Orioles had one too many players with Adley Rutschman? Like if I'm already getting Salvador Perez as my backup with my starter and with the Texas Rangers guy, I feel like I don't need Adley too.
I didn't have Adley in mind for that reason. I did have Austin Hayes on mine.
Yeah, he's having a great season.
And you had to have the combination Bautista and Cano, that 1-2 punch. They have been absolutely phenomenal. They've been like 1990s bad boys, nasty boys, Reds, having that, it's why the Orioles are going to be a potentially dangerous team in the postseason, because, that's sort of that 1990 Reds, 2015 Royals formula of just make sure we got the lead by the 7th, because if we got the lead by the 7th, you ain't got a chance. And so you had to have both Bautista and Cano in there. Yeah, I mean, Rutschman would be the one of Baltimore that I would have left off, but I do understand having wanting to have 3 catchers on the roster.
Yeah. If you're talking about building the next generation too, consider Rutschman one of those next wave of generational stars. So maybe you get him out in front and expose him a little bit more.
Let me put it this way. In 5 years, and again, if you make the major leagues, you're obviously an extraordinarily talented. Mm-hmm. If you've made the All-Star team, even as a token representative, obviously you're a player of note. But I have a feeling, so I'm putting that caveat on there, but I have a feeling in 5 years, we will be saying, wait, Brent Rooker was an All-Star? And I have a feeling the idea of Adley Rutschman being an All-Star, like, well, yeah, of course, yeah. I think it'll be a much easier to swallow that pill in a couple of years.
Yeah, you're not even going to think about it. One guy who I was kind of surprised, who I think is going to be possibly the injury replacement to Aaron Judge, if you want to add a little bit extra excitement to the game, but Wander Franco from the Tampa Bay Rays, near 30 stolen bases. He's like one of the league leaders in WRC plus, like all the advanced stats. Love Wander Franco. I feel like he's a fan favorite and one of the more popular players in baseball. I'm surprised he didn't make it to the All-Star game.
I am too. There's something that I'm like very happy to see that, Cole is having a wonderful year with New York. Eovaldi. I mean, I'm a big Eovaldi fan, obviously. McClanahan and Gausman and Sonny Gray they're all having fine seasons, and so I don't think there's any, with the exception of Lorenzen over Rodriguez from Detroit. I think that's the one issue I have. I don't really have an issue with any of the other pitchers, and except maybe Kenley Jansen.
Yeah.
I don't mind Jansen in there, but I don't understand why he is the lone Red Sox and not Verdugo. That to me makes zero sense to me.
Yeah. Wouldn't you want to see like a breakdown of how these voting is going for the reserves and like who's voting for this stuff? Because it says like via player ballot in commissioner's office, but how does someone determine that Kenley Jansen is the best player to represent the Red Sox this season, or Michael Lorenzen the best Detroit Tiger, despite him just being not very good this year?
Well, it beats what it used to be, which was the managers of the previous World Series teams
just got to pick
them. And like a lot of times there would be like, Cito Gaston and Tommy Lasorda were kind of famous for, hey, they took me to the dance last year. Like, yeah, but they're not that good. There's a couple of years where it was just a little ridiculous. And of course, Cito Gaston had to eat so much guff from the fans at when he was the manager in Baltimore. When the All-Star game was in Baltimore, and Mike Mussina was on the All-Star team, and the American League had the lead in the 9th inning, and Gaston, I think, had Dwayne Ward. He had one of his pitchers, one of the Blue Jays pitchers, and Mike Mussina was warming up in the bullpen, and the crowd was chanting for "We want Mussina, we want Mussina." And it got to be 2 outs, and everyone was like, "Come on, Cito, bring in Mussina to get the crowd up and for the final outs." And nope, rode his guy to the end. And the final out in the American League Stadium, American League won, and the cascades of boos to Cito Gaston for not bringing in Mussina. Of course, Mussina didn't care. He was probably doing a crossword and reconstructing a brain. He was a genius, and he's made no shortage of all-star appearances, but not in his home park. I mean, that's like, and that should be it's in Seattle this year. So the Seattle representatives it may be only Castillo. Is it only Castillo? Hold on, let me look up here.
From the Mariners? Because Julio's not having that kind of season.
Yeah, he's not on there. Castillo, so Castillo has to make an appearance. I don't care what point, but at some point Castillo has to make an appearance, and you should always make sure that whoever is the host city, that their representatives have to get in there.
Yeah, because the Mariners are just having such an underwhelming season after coming off what they had last season, and Julio's not exactly taking a step forward. I thought George Kirby could have been considered for an all-star game consideration. Yeah. He's having a pretty good season. But he lost Robbie Ray to start the season. Just been a really weird year for the Mariners.